I'm Doug, and I'm from Colorado. And in case you didn't know, in Colorado, we invented a few things like skiing, craft beer, legal marijuana, and easygoing business attire. So, last Wednesday night, I actually packed my suitcase for this event. And you might be thinking, what's up with this guy? Well, this is a great opportunity to share and learn from each other. But that's not the only reason I packed it on Wednesday night. Pretty busy guy. Had to go to a son's football game on Thursday night. Left early before 6 o'clock on Friday morning to fly out here to see another son play in a college football game and visit some family and so forth. But in doing so on Wednesday night, I had to face a decision that everybody has to deal with when you pull out the suitcase. And that is what are you going to wear? Okay. Obviously, you got some basics. Everybody's got the socks, the underwear, and this and that. But I was thinking, should I go ahead and bring a jacket? Dress up pretty fancy. Or I was thinking, geez, maybe I should. There's a lot of money involved in compressed air, whether it's buying the equipment and certainly how much we're spending on energy. There's a lot of money involved in this. In fact, I saw a vendor that said it's not about compressed air, it's about the money. And there's a lot of truth to that. On the other hand, I thought, what, maybe I should come up here and wear a Hawaiian shirt. Be relaxed. I mean, look at this group here. We got a pretty good group here. Likes to have a good time, don't take things too serious, have some drinks, share a lot, friendly people, and so forth. And so really, those are two common themes here today. Is there is a lot of money involved in this, but there's also doing some good with the opportunities that we have with whether it's compressed air, vacuum, or even chilled water and cooling systems. So today I'm going to talk about these topics. This is kind of the cadence here. We're going to talk a little bit about some introductions and some mindset, because that's pretty important, as well as touch on the keys of really success in all these. So there's some common themes with compressed air, vacuum, and chilled water. I'm also going to talk about some of the foundationals of energy management, because really that does define the foundation of a lot of our success and a lot of the programs that we have in place around those three pillars. And then we'll get into some specifics on compressed air, vacuum, cooling, chilled water, and then some takeaway conclusions. So a little bit about Ball. Some people have probably heard about the company. It's been around a long time. And a lot of people think about Ball because they're familiar with Ball cannon jars. And actually, the company started that many, many years ago. They were in that business for about 100 years. But we don't actually make Ball jars anymore. You can still buy them under a licensee agreement with our name, but we're not in the glass business anymore. And instead, our main line of business is aluminum beverage cans. And you can see there how many we make a year, over 100 billion. That's not a mislabel. I get the N mixed up with the B, but it's over 100 billion cans around the world. And so almost 1 out of every 2 cans in the United States is made by Ball, and like I said, a lot around the world. So if you like beer, you like carbonated beverages, we make a lot of cans and do it every year. We have a lot of plants. Including about 20 here in North America. And a lot of the comments and the programs I'm going to talk about today revolve around those plants. We're also in some other businesses, such as aerospace. We also have a steel food and an aerosol can manufacturing operation, which I did a lot of work with over the years. And we just spun that off into a JV. But I'm mostly going to talk about our metal beverage operations. A little bit about myself. I've been with the company for almost 20 years. Previous to helping out with energy management, which I've been doing for about 13 years, I was an environmental professional. So that's my background. And we'll get a little bit into how we got energy management going at Ball. But I think a fundamental aspect for a lot of people in this room, as well as your plants, is having a mindset of about waste, around waste. If you think about it, my parents, their parents grew up, my grandparents grew up in the Great Depression, okay, and things were hard back then. And my parents grew up with a mindset of not to waste, and what you do have, you take good care of things. And so that's the mentality that I have, and that's the mentality that we need to harness with folks in the plants. Not everybody's like that, people come from different generations and different backgrounds, but really that's a fundamental mindset that you need to have is, don't waste, and what you do have, take good care of it. Another note I want to make, though, that's a common theme about this conference, is that, everybody is born a baby, and everybody has things to learn, okay? And that certainly is part of our journey, and that, you go back, 20 years ago at Ball, there wasn't a lot of knowledge around compressed air. We were just like everybody else. Run the machines, and could be in blow off, could be in partial load or whatever, but it's about learning. And this is a great opportunity, shows like this, as well as other resources that I'll mention. It's all about learning. So besides individual values, I do want to touch on some company values, and that is there's what we call keys to success. And whether this is part of your company, it certainly could be part of your programs that you have for overall energy management or compressed air or whatnot. And that is, it really boils down to some key things. Attention to details, okay? It really is, the details. Behaving like an owner. Won't we all love to be able to walk into the room next door and spend 5 minutes making a change or an adjustment and save $1,000 a year? Okay, that's the opportunities that we have here with a lot of these systems, and getting employees to understand that they have that power. And really, at the end of the day, it all goes down to the company bottom line. Those are the things that we need to communicate and get out there and get people motivated. Another key for us, though, in a lot of the success we have is creativity and innovation. Okay, we all deal with problems. Okay, and you need to come up with solutions. It's not all on you, but it's working with people in your organization, figuring out who those champions are, who those experts are, giving them recognition, but it's working through problems, whether it's a pressure setting or a compressor issue or whatever it is. You need to work through problems with creativity and innovation. So a little bit about energy management. As I mentioned, that was started up in 2006. Okay, before that, we weren't tracking our energy consumption. I mean, surely the guy that's buying energy knows a little bit about how much they have to budget for next year, but there wasn't performance metrics or anything like that. And why did we start managing energy back in 2006? Before it was relatively cheap, but then 2005, if you remember, we had this thing called Hurricane Katrina. Okay, and while we spend most of our energy on electricity, we do have a fair amount of natural gas. And if you remember back then, natural gas, there was a huge disruption in supply, and there was a huge spike in price back in 2005, where gas went from, say, $1 a decatherm up to $1.50 a decatherm if you were riding the market, and we certainly were. So you can imagine if you're spending $20 million a year on natural gas and all of a sudden it goes up another $15 million, well, that gets people's attention in the company. At the same time, we had signed up for EPA's Climate Leaders program to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So we really had a convergence of a couple of different factors between price and programs, and reality too, that there was some undercurrents around sustainability, and starting to putting some of those programs together, we came up with energy management, and for the good or the bad or the ugly, I got the assignment. So it's been a lot of fun though since then. So how did we get started? It's really looking around and struggling there for a little bit, but there were some key things that really got us off to a quicker start. And one of those was the EPA Energy Star program. We became an industrial partner, and as Walt already said, so I don't need to expand too much on that, they have a tremendous amount of resources available both out on the web and in their program. And it gave us access also to leaders in the industry and that have been doing energy management for a long time. We were able to benchmark and learn very quickly from them on some very, frankly, basic fundamentals, tracking energy consumption, having metrics, communicating that, coming up with a plan, acting on the plan, measuring the plan. Basic stuff, but nevertheless, it really got us off to a quick start. One of the things that we quickly realized within months of starting is that you look around your plant and you do an inventory and where you're using the energy. Well, a lot of energy is being used by compressed air. So let's segue to that. You can see right down there or up on the board how much compressed air that some of our metal beverage plants use, quite a bit. And some of our plants have dual systems, and we've increased the number of plants that have dual systems. They use less energy to make 60 psi than you do 100 psi. So we've increased the amount of plants that we have dual systems in. But we really, try to get an idea of where we're at. And so a lot of that boiled down to starting to do audits. And we got partnered up with a real good outfit, a professional outfit, to do audits. And we started going around plants and collecting information, okay? And that worked out really good. We came up with some things that worked out as far as a low-cost approach, a real short report where we had really an executive summary of very basic information, such as inventory of the equipment and running configuration and very key metrics as we have up there on the board. One thing I will say, though, in our approach is that it's not like we forced this down plants' throats, okay? It was a collaborative approach. In fact, the funding had to come from the plants. And so it was me, publicizing this, explaining that, hey, there's a lot of money to be saved in this. We can improve your reliability. We can come up with a systematic program. And so it's getting the plant guys involved to go ahead and write the PO and accommodate the audit. We collected the information, and then it's getting them on the telephone to share the report, talk about the highlights, review the data together, and come up with actionable items that we could do. Of course, some common things about compressed air. Most of you guys know this. Artificial demand is a big deal. We won't get into so many of those details. Reducing pressure. We had a lot of plants that were 100, 110 psi. Why does it need to be like that? I don't know. It's been always like that. So, you have some plants that are leaders. There's a plant that's running at 90, 95. Well, geez, we have a plant over here that's running at 90. Why can't we get to 90 over here at this other plant? And it's sharing best practices. What did they do to get to 90? Or what is it that's preventing people from getting to 90 or lowering their pressure even further? It's looking at a lot of these different things. Comparing equipment, figuring out your pressure drops, looking at controls. Are you running compressors at a high level because you have system upsets on the demand side? Or is it because your controls are not very good and you're not holding pressure very steady? So we've done a lot of capital projects over the years to address all these things on both the demand side as well as the capital side. That's another key is as you're going through this journey is to document a lot of your successes. And one of the things that we've done a pretty good job at is communicating that. We had a monthly newsletter that we sent out to all the plant managers and the engineering managers, our plant energy champions. And we talked about where we had successes at. And I'll tell you what, it's great. You do a lot of audits at the plants, but at the ones that want to get it done first. And we were strategic. We went to the coast where we had the energy incentives, where we had the high energy cost. And then before you know it, you get a call from a plant manager actually coming to us and saying, hey, how do I get in on this compressed air stuff? Because you're sending out communications and you're having all the success, but their plant's not included in it. So, it's part of the peer pressure as well as sharing the best practices. Hey, I like to get a check for a $500,000 incentive, So it's sharing that and getting people interested. A couple, again, highlights there and some of the things that we've done, you know, that you heard here, obviously artificial control, looking at the supply side, working with OEMs to reduce the compressed air that's used in their equipment. Instead of going the OEM filters, for example, going with filters that are bigger and have less pressure drop. There's a whole plethora of different things that we did on both the supply side and on the demand side. Some were low, no cost, and obviously some were big bucks. But we were really aggressive in getting the capital as well as working with utilities and getting incentives. For compressed air and around vacuum, we've probably gotten over the years close to $6 million in incentives. Our biggest one was over $700,000. So one last thing about compressed air, audits are great, but it's only a snapshot in time. And so we're always looking to get better. I mean, one of the common themes you hear today is continuous improvement. And so one of the things that we're looking at doing is putting in a lot of instrumentation in our systems to clearly understand what's happening all the time on both the supply side and the demand side, and have that throughout all of our plants. And so that's one of the things that we're rolling out. The one thing I want to emphasize is that, you know, it's great spending a lot of money on this type of stuff, but again, at the end of the day, it's only a tool, okay? And we all know that you can have a great tool, but if it's not getting used, you're not going to get a value on it or return on investment. So one of the things that we've learned in doing energy monitoring elsewhere is that you have to have very good reporting. Okay, that's easy for the user to use, it's easy to understand, and in fact, where we're going with this is even having push reports. So the user doesn't have to go to the information, we're actually sending the data out to key people in the plant manager, as well as the engineer manager to understand their performance. Vacuum, quickly. Very similar to compressed air. You're looking at the supply side, and you're looking at the demand side. You're doing audits, you're collecting information, you have data, you understand, you know, are they using a lot? Are you using a little? If so, why? If they're running at 24 inches of vacuum, why they need to run at 24 inches when you have other plants that are running at 18? You know, is it because the piping's not right? Is it because they have the right piping, but it hasn't been cleaned in 20 years and it's all filled up and partially clogged? You run into all those type of problems. And so, you know, we've been, again, implementing the same principles like compressed air on vacuum. You know, again, one of the things that we like to do on vacuum is when the process stops, whether it's for 20 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, instead of sucking the atmosphere, we are going ahead and installing vacuum conservation valves and shutting off the vacuum at the process. And then having a VFD on a vacuum pump turning down on the supply side. Okay, so it's all about controlling flow, controlling pressure, and making the system adaptive and saving the energy, as well as giving the operators what they need to make the product. We don't use a lot of chilled water in our process, but some plants, we have a handful of plants that do have plant-wide, I call it air conditioning. They are in very hot areas, but again, it's bringing those same principles about supply and demand. And in many of these cases, you can control the demand to a degree. So some of our locations, we again condition the air for human comfort and whatnot, and you can reduce the internal heat gain of a building. You know, you have hot sources in the building, vent it outside directly, reduce your internal heat gain of the building. On the supply side, great controls, you know, VFDs on different parts of pumps and centrifugal loads, it all goes together. One of the common themes that we've heard here throughout the session is systems, and you gotta look at it from a systems approach. So some final conclusions here. You know, you really have to have both the individual mindsets, the energy champions in the plant, the individuals in your organization that are really going to drive this, as well as an organizational mindset. You know, we're real big about sustainability at Ball. We got a long ways to go, but go on our website, check out our sustainability report that is fairly transparent about both the good and the bad. But that certainly helps having that foundation at the organization. You know, focus first on where the money's at, where you have expensive electricity, where the rebates are, and where you know through collecting some data where you have some inefficiencies at. The success is always based upon technology, so figure out what that is, get people to help you out with the application. But remember, the people are certainly a big part of that equation as well. It's just, as we've said here about the low-hanging fruit growing back on the tree, you got to be aggressive. You can have great programs, but sometimes things go awry, people change. You can have a system that all of a sudden is going off because someone changed some set points or whatever. So keep a pulse on it. Continuous monitoring is eventually the gold standard where we're going, and that's a key to it. I think yesterday we heard a big part of our key success is having a trusted industry professional, and we've had a great partnership through the years, and that's been a big key to our success. Find somebody that you can trust, that you partner with, and you learn together, and you go through the journey with. So those are a couple ideas that we have here today, and thanks again, Rod, for the presentation and the opportunity of the conference and to learn from each other.